Good afternoon. Today's talk will be on Yeats' poem Byzantium. Now, Byzantium as a symbolic poem had perhaps its thematic life and origin in a note in the diary of Yeats in 1930. Yeats had long been an admirer of Byzantine art and culture and wanted to combine this passion with his belief in the spiritual journey of the artistic human soul. In a diary note, Yeats wrote, and I quote, describe Byzantium as it is in the system towards the end of the first Christian millennium, a walking mummy, flames at street corners where the soul is purified, birds of hammered gold singing in the golden trees, in the harbor, dolphins offering their backs to the waiting dead that they may carry them to paradise. Unquote. Now, with this brief contextual information, we go into a brief paraphrase of this poem. The poem Byzantium begins in a night scene in Byzantium. Yeats says that at night in the city of Byzantium, the unpurged images of dead seed, the drunken soldiers of the emperor are asleep, and the song of night walkers fades after the great cathedral gong. The starlit or moonlit dome, the speaker says, disdains all that is human. He says, all mere complexities, the fury and the mire of human beings. The speaker says that before him floats an image, a man or a shade, but maybe more a shade than a man, and still more simply, an image. The speaker hails this superhuman image, calling it death in life and life in death. A golden bird sits on a golden tree, which the speaker says is a miracle. It sings aloud and scorns the common bird or petal and all complexities of mire or blood. At midnight, the speaker says, the images of flame flit across the emperor's pavement, though they are not fed by wood or steel, nor disturbed by storms. Here, Yeats says, blood begotten spirits come and die into a dance, an agony of trance, an agony of flame that cannot sing just leave. Unquote. Leaving behind all the complexities and furies of life. Riding the backs of dolphins, spirit after spirit arrives, the flood broken on the golden smithies of the emperor. The marbles of the dancing floor break the bitter furies of complexity, the storms of images that beget more images, the dolphin torn, that gong tormented sea. Now, essentially, this is a poem about the relationship between life, death, and art. Or more strictly, it is a poem about what at once both attracted and repelled Yeats in his life personally, about what he had once hoped and feared from death, and about what he aspired to in his own art. That at least is a large clue that we can have from his notebook or diary notings on Byzantium. At a higher level, we can assume or interpret that this poem also reflects some form of a pull or a tension in Yeats's mind about the ideas of one and the many, one with a capital O and many with a capital M, the eternal and the temporal, the permanent and the transient, wisdom and action, all considered conventionally as polar opposites. But such a generalization, if we may call it a generalization, cannot go beyond a particular fact when we know that Yeats essentially wishes to arrive at some form of a compromise between the two extremes or the two opposites. Now, when we speak of Byzantium as a symbol, we are also reminded of the other poem, the companion poem to this one, the Sailing to Byzantium, where Yeats writes, as he often writes in his poems, as a passionate man, a great poet confronting old age and death, the world of sensual delight. He says, the young in one another's arms, birds in the trees, those dying generations at their song. That world is, he says in the earlier companion poem, no country for an old man, but we should not, according to Yeats, perhaps accept decrepitude passively, but the soul should sing louder for that every tatter in its mortal or physical dress. So that is the reason why perhaps Yeats has set sail for the holy city of Byzantium, and he wants its ages to be the singing masters of its soul. Byzantium in the earlier poem is pretty obviously and in a very straightforward manner a symbol of the permanence of art, even after the artist is dead, set against the mutability or transience of human life. And when Yeats says in this earlier poem that he wants after death to be transformed into a golden singing bird, singing to the lords and ladies of Byzantium, of what is past or passing or about to come, what he means at an immediately prosaic level is the fact that after his death, he will have a kind of immortality in his poems, which will always appeal to choice spirits through their beautiful workmanship and the time transcending universality of their themes. If this is what Yeats meant by his note on Byzantium or his preoccupation with Byzantium, it would perhaps invite less differences of opinion among critics. But nevertheless, in both the poems, we cannot stop at that, because in these poems, Yeats also has, and he expresses it very, very powerfully, an imaginative apprehension of what his fanciful notion rests on. The great lines in the poem, the lines that morally transforms it, that takes it to that level of one of the most important and critically accepted poems in 20th century, are the lines where he says, and I quote, "Consume my heart away, sick with desire, and fasten to a dying animal. It knows not what it is." So Sailing to Byzantium is essentially, and in an ultimate analysis perhaps, not a poem about, but not a poem in the usual sense in which we understand it, but a precious fantasy about a state of mind, and a very painful state at that, from which the false consolation of such a fancy could spring. In fact, the proper response to Sailing to Byzantium is that Byzantium is the right destination, both for Yeats and for us. And in fact, Yeats's last poems are anything but poems of serene mechanical artifice. They are very much poems of the heart, which is sick with desire and fastened to a dying animal, the mortal body. Poems of that very late themes, which he was to call lust and rage, poems of what he calls in Byzantium himself the fury and the mire of the human veins. More broadly, I think it helps in considering Sailing to Byzantium and Byzantium to remember and to remind us constantly of the constant tug of war that Yeats had in his mind towards the two directions, was the idea of a state of being transcending life while in a mortal body, often imagined as a kind of artificial paradise which we create for ourselves after death out of the images of the beautiful things we have admired here. And again, towards an actual physical level of life at all levels, the level even of a blind man battering blind men. But Byzantium in the poem is, again, it can be considered as a symbol for timeless or persistent order of some sort set against an outer general flux of time. It stands for something which at once transcends and both torments and disturbs man. It is enough if the Byzantium of the poem gets from the Byzantium of history some form of an air of remoteness, of ancientness, of dignity, an air of being noble and undying and undecaying, center of something, usually artistic. The empire sprawling around and prodded at by barbarians through repeated invasions, in more or less a permanent and inevitable decay. This was perhaps again the idea of Byzantium that Yeats had as a young man. And this is the idea that is at the barest minimum level of thematic congruity. It's an idea that can be applied to this particular poem as we try and interpret it. But nevertheless, none of the individual ideas that we get to know of with regard to Byzantium and sailing to Byzantium are complete in themselves. They very often complement each other and makes our assessment of both these two Byzantine poems richer in trying to bring our attention to various aspects of Byzantium, both as a historical entity and Byzantium as a source of an artistic entity, a source of art, as it were, into focus. Thank you.